see some talented folks up here on the front row. So I'm going to ask Jordan and Kareem, if you would, I've handed them, it's only a 500-piece puzzle, it's not that big.
Let me know.
If you could just take a second, look through there and tell me what it is supposed to be. I'll give them a few minutes. I know they are unusually talented, so we'll let them process that for a few minutes. If you have your Bibles open, if you would, Exodus chapter 4. Exodus chapter 4, which is where we'll get to eventually. And so we're setting up a conversation, and I hope tonight that there's one thing that you can get out of our conversation that you can take home with you, that will stick with you, that will help you in this conversation. And what we're talking about, we're just calling it Life's Big Five. These 5 big questions about life that determine the way we do life, or the way that we approach life. Are we close at all? Not yet? Yes. Okay, you have a guess? You have a guess. What's the guess?
Field of flowers with a stream and blue sky.
A field of flowers with a stream and some trees and a blue sky. I mean, that sounds like Odessa. What did you ask for? The lid. What about the lid for? Oh, well, I'll let you keep working on it. Shoot, they want the lid. I don't understand. You have all the pieces. I'll guarantee this. All the pieces are in the box. I unsealed the box this afternoon, so there's nothing missing. So we do this with. Usually, I usually pick noisy kids that are distracting and give them something to do. So. Teach you to sit on the front row. Okay, why does, I told them everything they need in that box, right? All 500 pieces in the box. 500 pieces are in the box. What's missing? The vision, what did I hear over here?
The brain to put it together.
Wow. Okay. You're lucky I didn't see you. I brought you the piece. Okay. What did you say it was going to be? It looks wildernessy. I heard field of flowers, blue sky, a stream. Oh yeah, trees. Well,
maybe not.
I mean, there's some truth to what they said. Okay? There are some flowers. It's more like, yeah, I guess, that's more like, what do you call those? Those are bushes in the fall that turn colors. Yeah, I don't think that's flowers. Do you think that's flowers? Those are not flowers. It's not a stream. It's a small looking little pond in a mountain meadow. They didn't even notice a mountain. It's too late. You're just saying that because you've seen it. It is really difficult to put together a puzzle if you don't know what it's supposed to look like. So what you do with a puzzle is you set the box top off to the side and it guides you to know how to put it together. This series, if all you get tonight is this 2 sentences, no, you can't go home yet, but if what you get out of this is, how do you put together life? How do you put together the pieces? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What's it supposed to look like? What do you need to put the pieces of life together? A box top. What's it supposed to look like? And so tonight, we'll come back to this at the end. We're going to give them, all right, I guess I'll let you off the hook. I'm going to bring in one of those preschool, like 4-piece puzzles next week and see if you can do that. The question is there a box top to life? And who has it?
God.
Okay? That's the conversation we're going to have tonight. And we're going to start with this question, why am I here? If we don't have a box top to life, how do we answer this question? So, for example, one particular view is that you and I are the result of a cosmological accident, and our development is through a biological, evolutionary, accidental process which got us to where we are today. If that's true, is there a why? Other than, I guess, it's survival of the fittest, consume nutrients, live long and prosper and die, right? That is one version of the box top. That there aren't pieces that go together, or at least I can say it's a different picture altogether than maybe what most of us in this room think. So the box top is the quest. And so tonight we're going to talk about faith. When you say you have to have faith, does that mean that there are no evidence, there's no intellectual process, or there are no facts involved? Is faith, or does faith have to be blind? I'm going to ask two questions. I'm going to ask, do you have enough faith to be a Christian? And then I'm going to ask the second question, do you have enough faith to be an atheist? We'll see how that develops. Because first of all, the box top determines how we answer these questions. Where did we come from? Who are we? Go ahead.
The dust of the earth.
Okay. Why are we here? Because that comes from where we came from, whether we're an accident, whether we're created. And then if there's a box top, is there a way we should live? Or is it just however we want to? And then finally, where are we going? So the next question is, who do we ask to find the box top? Basically, I would say there are three categories. There's theism, there's pantheism, and there's atheism. Theism is just a general word for God exists, that God is over all. Pantheism is God is in all. You run into that way of thinking when you talk about some of the indigenous tribes and various cultures. The first thing that pops into my mind is Star Wars, because it's all about the Force, and the Force is within us all. The Force is guiding us in an inanimate or non-specific way. And then the third, of course, in atheism is there is no God. So there is God exists and is over all, God is in all, or there is no God. So when we say that religion does not exclude facts, or faith is not in opposition to evidence. We talked about this last week, just to review. There are evidences for the unseen. And we used last week the example was gravity. The force of gravity cannot be seen, but it can be experienced. It can be measured, evidence can be collected, and we can begin to define a force that we cannot see. We can say the same thing for magnetic fields. We can say the same thing, I think last time we talked about electromagnetic waveforms. We talked about, that means your cell phones and TV and radio and Wi-Fi and internet and radiation and x-rays and all that stuff, which is unseen to us. I would actually argue that probably the building blocks or the foundation of our existence has more to do with the unseen than the seen. I'll give you another example, which is foundational to life, is the photosynthesis process. You can't see it, but it's the process for how green plants take in solar radiation and turn it into nutrition, energy that leads to nutrition. Without green plants, we don't have the atmospheric conditions that we need, nor do we have the fundamental building block of nutrition for all life on Earth as we know it. We could talk about electricity, if I haven't mentioned that one already, and on and on. And so we live in a physical existence which is dependent on unseen forces. The laws of thermodynamics would be another example. So it's interesting that we live in a physical existence dependent on major unseen forces, but we might balk at the idea of an unseen spiritual force or existence. Any questions so far? So, these facts are going to have, or these beliefs are going to have mutually exclusive claims. In other words, does God exist? Yes or no? You can't have it both ways. Either he does or he doesn't. Gravity exists. Yes or no? Going to where we're headed, did the universe have a beginning? And the answer is either yes or no. In American culture right now, it's a big deal to us to talk about tolerance and believe what you want, it's all good, it all leads to the same place, doesn't really matter. But most of that breaks down with any logical process. Because if you ask the question, did the universe have a beginning? It either did or it didn't. They can't both be true. And there's a large impact, because that starts moving toward the box top, which way you answer that question. We'll kind of develop that in a few minutes as well. For us, we might ask this question: did Jesus rise from the dead or not? You can't have both, right? One or the other. So when we pursue truth or facts, we don't get to all have our convenient personal truth. We can have our own beliefs. We can't have our own truths. It's either true or it's not. So the question is, when you take this leap of faith, because one of the things I think sometimes Christians are criticized about is, well, it's just all about faith rather than science or facts or that sort of approach. But the truth is, any belief system requires faith. Faith is a conviction and a confidence in things not seen. We've already used the example of gravity, electricity, photosynthesis, and electromagnetic fields and all that stuff. But it's also true in our question or pursuit about the box top. So that means what we're going to do in the next few weeks is try to pursue reasonable claims and evidence and determine which requires the least amount of faith, or which one is the best supported by truth. Are there any reasons why we might inherently be resistant to the idea of Christianity? Okay, being in the world, or going to the comment over here somewhere.
Unseen.
Okay, I can't see it, I can't perceive it.
We want to be our own God.
We want to be our own God. I think it's fair to start with, we have some default resistance to the idea. I think the way to deal with your blind spots is to admit you have them. So I might have an intellectual resistance to Christianity. Have you ever been bombarded by scientific claims as if that means there is no God? Have you been told things? Have you been shown things that intellectually challenges somewhat, or at least makes you think, oh, I don't know? Probably one of the most powerful intellectual difficulties in Christianity is the existence of evil. If you go back to last fall, we were talking about the God questions. We said the number one thing that people said they would ask God if they were given a chance is, if you're such a good and loving God, why do you allow such bad things to happen? That's a challenge. It's just being honest. That creates an intellectual struggle when we talk about God and His character and His existence. There's an emotional resistance. There are some things about Christianity that just don't feel good. It doesn't make me feel good that the Bible teaches about a place called hell where people will be forever if they've rejected Christ. That doesn't feel good. I don't think it should. But emotionally, I'm like, ugh. Or we talked about Sunday, Jesus says that we're to forgive our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. Does that feel good? So there are elements or truths about Christianity that I have emotional resistance to. And then I can end with what I would just call volitional resistance. In other words, I just don't want to. And this goes to what Smokey said. I want to do what I want to do. The morality of Christianity can become a stumbling block because maybe I don't want my moral choices to be restricted. I want to be my own God. I want to do what I want to do. Because if there is a God, and if He sent His Son named Jesus Christ, then that means there's an accountability. I'm going to have to give an answer for the choices that I make and the life that I live. And not all of that's necessarily positive. Does that make sense? So there are some reasons to be reluctant or resistant to the idea of Christianity, and I might want to look for some alternatives. Carl Sagan has probably been one of the most influential thinkers in modern times about the idea that there is no God. And what he said was, one of his famous statements, the universe is all that is, all that was, and is all that ever will be. His way of saying that the universe has always existed, that there has been no beginning. It's just been here, and it's going to be here. Because if there's no beginning, then you don't have to have cause. It's just, we're here because we're here. But we'll look at some examples along the way. One simple example would be, what does the evidence actually say about the universe? Because to say the universe has always existed, Carl Sagan doesn't know definitively, right? Why? How is it that he doesn't definitively know? Because he can't go out and see it all, because he hasn't been there since forever, right? Because the only way he could definitively know that that was true is if he has always existed alongside the universe. Hey, it would be helpful if he had just been around for even 1,000 years. That would help. When I was growing up, that would help. Right? That means Carl Sagan, myself, you and I, that we share something in common. None of us were there. So, we have to take it on faith. Carl Sagan does. Mike Crowley does. So that puts us on a level playing field. Okay, so don't come to me and say that I have faith and you have facts when both of us have to have faith because neither one of us were there. Therefore, let's pursue the facts then. And that's where we're headed, but a simple one tonight. Did you know that the sun that makes life possible on the earth is running out of fuel? Now, don't sell your pension plan yet because the sun has 97 to 96% of its original fuel. And they measure that because it's the difference between hydrogen and helium, what it started with and what it's burned off. So we got a few weeks left. But here's the fact, or here's an interesting thought. If the universe has always been, then a law of thermodynamics causes a question mark, big one, because if the universe has always been, what do you do with the fact that the sun has a limited amount of fuel? It will run out of gas. What's also interesting is they have measured the stars across our galaxy that can be measured, is that they are in the same place with the sun. They're running on about 96-97% of their original fuel. If the universe has always existed, how does the sun still burn? That's just a small example of, did the universe have a beginning or did it not? You have to have faith in either an eternal God or an eternal universe. Both you're going to have faith for because none of us were there. It's a matter of faith. The sun's fuel is an example that we will explore. The scientific evidence points to the fact that the universe exploded out of nothing. The way I picture it is if you had a videotape of the universe and the expanding galaxies and all that kind of stuff, and you had it recorded, all you'd have to do is hit rewind. Because if you rewind it backwards, what we're seeing today in the existence and the expansion and the movement would all move backwards to a point in time where it suddenly appears. And we'll explore some examples of that. We'll look at some facts. We'll look at some evidence. The sun's fuel is just one of them. But that creates this question. How much faith do you have? Either someone created something from nothing, which is a bold statement, right? I mean, that takes a little, Someone created something from nothing. Option one. There's only one other option. or no one created something from nothing. Because if you hit rewind on the universe, you're going to come back to a point where it comes into existence. And so it's a matter of faith. Either someone created something from nothing, or no one created something from nothing. There'll be three approaches that we'll use. The first is I think my favorite. These next two are one of my favorites. A cosmological or big picture view. We'll look at the evidence for the universe having a beginning, and then that will demand some questions of us. And then we'll zoom in on something tighter and talk about how the simplest life forms on Earth today have more coded information in them than 1,000 encyclopedias. So from a big picture, the universe, the galaxies, the planets, the amount of fuel the sun's burning, that sort of picture, and we'll rewind that and fast forward and rewind it a little bit. And then we'll get our microscopes out and go, well, let's just look at the simplest single-cell organisms on our planet today. And look at some of the evidences, the examples, the facts, that there's more coded, precise information in one of those single-cell organisms than what you could put in 1,000 encyclopedia volumes. And then you're going to have a faith question. Either this is an example of intelligent design, these little single-cell organisms, or it is an example of an accidental mutation process. It's either intelligent design, it was done on purpose, or it's purely the result of random accident. And that's what you get pushed to. It's one or the other. They can't both be true. The third thing as we get to the end of this conversation will be the fact of ancient manuscripts foretelling a God-man coming to earth and giving his life a ransom for many, for all. And that these ancient prophetic texts will be demonstrated by historically accurate texts and reliable eyewitness accounts to have been fulfilled. Because we'll remind ourselves of manuscripts that are proven to have been written hundreds of years before Jesus was ever born, and how they line up with the facts, the historically accurate facts of Jesus' existence and the circumstances surrounding it. So three levels: a cosmological, big picture kind of idea, microscopic kind of, wow, let's just look at this one little guy. I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite current creatures, the Hawaiian bobtail squid. You may have met him already. We've only been recent acquaintances, and I think he's pretty fascinating. I'm going to show you some pictures and discuss with you that I think there is a more complicated design in a Hawaiian bobtail squid than anything the United States military has yet created. He is a unique creature. I think what fascinated me is the first time I ran across him, he was called the stealth bomber of the ocean, so that got my attention. But the bobtail Hawaiian squid has incredible stealth technology to keep him safe from predators while he's looking for supper in the shallow waters of the moonlit waters of coastal Hawaii. And I'm going to have to ask ourselves, is that a result of a random accidental process? Or is that evidence of intelligent design? I don't know how all this sounds to you. What are you thinking so far?
It's mind-blowing.
That's what I think. Bigger than me. Anybody else?
Take the mind of God that's put all this together to make us sit here talking about this tonight, just to grab our attention.
Like one fellow said, if we're just all accidental, overdeveloped, hairless apes, why do we think about what other people think about what we think? So remember, there's two goals here. If you're visiting with us, or if you can bring a visitor, We want to keep this a safe place to have a conversation. I don't want to come across arrogant or judgmental, but it's a safe conversation zone. But secondly, I hope to encourage those of us who do believe in God that you can walk out of here each night with one thing. Because we're going to make the most difference in the first 30 seconds of a conversation or in answering a question. And I hope tonight, for me, this is what I hope you go out with, is this. Just a puzzle box. Because we live in a culture that's trying to put the pieces of life together. We're trying to understand meaning. We're trying to understand purpose. We're trying to understand value. We're trying to define right and wrong without a box. Because what we're saying is, as a culture, it's just pieces. It's just pieces. By argument, I suppose, the pieces shouldn't even fit together because they're just all random pieces. But just like the Ruckman struggled to put it together, how do you put together morality and ethics, the treatment of others, if I don't know what I'm supposed to look like? So if someone were to ask me, do you believe in God, or are you a Christian, or are you really serious about church? There's different ways that question gets asked. My answer is I sure do. Because tonight I would say I can't imagine doing life without a box top. And it usually creates the delay.
Dissonance.
You know, a box top. Have you ever done a puzzle?
It's hard.
One of the times I was talking about this, I got in trouble because I divided up the men and the women, and I gave them each a puzzle and said, we're going to time who can do the puzzle first. And I gave them all the puzzles, except I didn't give the women's team a box top.
I bet they still beat you.
Maybe. But it made it closer than it would have been. Some of us in the room probably enjoy this kind of conversation, and like any topic, there's some of us that are like, I'd rather talk about something else. So if you're feeling, or if you ever feel overwhelmed, I'm not a scientist, this isn't a science class. I mean, I'm going to be ricocheting off the very top surface of this stuff. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's always about faith. Whether you're an atheist, a skeptic, an agnostic, or a Christian. That's kind of the 4 places you can be. Because an atheist has to have faith that there is no God. Because he can't know for sure. Because unless you have always existed and you were there at the beginning of time, and if you can travel the whole universe and you can cover every inch of existence, that's the only way you could know for sure whether or not there was a God. So they have to take it on faith. Can't know for sure. So an atheist has to have faith that there is no God. A skeptic has to have faith in skepticism. Because an atheist says there is no God, a skeptic says you can't know whether there's a God or not. I would just say, have you dropped an apple lately? You can know things that you can't see. Gravity being an example. An agnostic is a person who says, the atheist says there is no God, a skeptic says there's no way you can know whether there is a God or not. An agnostic says there is a God, but you can't know him. Can't know anything about him. Yes, there's a God, but it's all big, kind of fuzzy cloud, and there's nothing really that can be known. So an agnostic has to have faith in Gnosticism that it can't be known. Because how are you going to prove it? And you and I, most of us in this room who believe in God and believe in His Son, Jesus Christ, we also have to have faith that there is a God, Jesus is His Son, and the Bible is His Word that leads us to it. So really, it's all about faith. So how about just an honest pursuit of truth? Let's look at Exodus chapter 4. This is for me a theme verse in this conversation. God appears to Moses and tells him that his purpose is to stand before Pharaoh and represent him, and to tell Pharaoh, you got to let God's people go. And most of us know this story pretty well. Because Moses is reluctant. I'm not capable, I'm not qualified, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this. So I think it's beautiful what God does with Moses. Because to be fair, from Moses' perspective, isn't that a fairly large task in front of him? See, I'm used to reading Exodus from God's point of view, and it's no big deal, 10 plagues, part of the Red Sea, manna from heaven. Get on board, Moses. But I don't usually have God's point of view. I'm usually walking around like, I don't know why this is happening, I don't know what this means, I don't know what the future holds. Anybody feeling that way right now, this week and into next? So when God tells Moses, the Egypt that you ran away from 40 years ago, you're literally afraid for your life. That's why you're out here hiding as a shepherd. I want you to go back and face the most powerful man on your part of the planet. And I want you to tell him that he's got to do what I tell him. That is a monumental task for Moses' sandals. So I think it's beautiful how God prepares Moses for this huge thing. Is there anything about being a Christian today that you find overwhelming or seems like a large task? What's some examples?
Take up your cross.
Yeah, denying self. That is monumental. What else? Anybody?
Serving others.
Serving others. That's not always easy because I'm pretty good at being selfish. That comes natural.
Always being a good example.
Being a good example. I heard something back here.
Convincing others.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. What caught my ear was the word convincing. What helped me was to realize I can't convince someone. What I can do is share it. And that was where the heartburn was. It's like introducing two people because they'd make a great couple. Well, I don't do that. Why would you do that? If you were going to do that, you can introduce them, but you can't guarantee the outcome. Yeah, which is frustrating if you really care about it. What else? Jordan, you want to say something?
Going into all the world.
Just doing what Jesus said, go to unto the whole world and make disciples. I mean, I kind of rag on Moses because he's a chicken, but I am sometimes reluctant to just talk about Jesus to somebody I know. It's just amazing. So, what I get from this, chapter 4, verse 1, Moses said, what if they don't believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you. The Lord said to him, this is my favorite part of the whole Moses story, is this one question. What is that in your hand? Because what would a shepherd have in his hand? So Moses is like, I can't do this, and he's right. I mean, he can't. But God is the one telling them, we're going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. So Moses says, how do I know? I just don't know. What God says is, what do you have? What's in your hand right there? And Moses has to go, a staff. What difference does a stick make when you stand in front of Pharaoh? In fact, the shepherd's staff is a sign of his defeat. Because he was the prince of Egypt. And he left all that to run out and hide. And now the prince of Egypt is herding sheep. Also, we've noticed in Genesis that Pharaoh, that the Egyptians look upon shepherds, they despise the profession of being a shepherd. So a shepherd's staff is an Egyptian symbol, and Moses grew up in Egypt, in Pharaoh's palace. The staff is a symbol of the most shameful, ridiculous, useless career imaginable. There's nothing positive about the stick. And God says, what's in your hand? Just an embarrassing, useless stick. There's no way God could use me because of my inadequacies, because of my flaws, because of my sin, because of the ugly parts of me. Right? That's what Moses has in his hand, is a stick that represents all of that. He murdered a guy, took a life, and then he ran. And now he's hiding, and he's doing the worst job you can imagine. What's God ask? What's in his hand? What is God going to use? That. What is that in your hand? He said, a staff. Then he said, throw it on the ground. Now, I'm reading into this. I don't know what's in Moses' thought process, but when you remember what a shepherd is to an Egyptian, and God has just dredged up all those memories, go to Pharaoh and talk to him, because my people, I've heard their cry. He's dredged all that back up. If Moses had been able to tamp that down out in the field, God brings it right back up to him, and then he says, throw it down. I'm guessing I would have interpreted that moment when he throws the stick down as you're turning away from being a shepherd, you're turning away from this, that was rejecting his current identity. That he's telling Moses to throw that away. You got no business being a shepherd. That's where I would have thought this was going. He throws down the stick, and you know what happens. What happens? Which makes sense so far. Because if it's yucky and negative and all that, if there's any emotional attachment about this is a symbol of failure, what is the right thing to do with a snake? Run, kill it, and run. Right? I mean, is there anything positive about snake? So, do what? I knew somebody was going to try. Thank you for your sweet heart. I don't agree, but thank you for trying. Throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground and it became a serpent, and Moses, yeah, he's smart. Well, first of all, he wasn't expecting it. If nothing else, that would just shock you. But he runs from it. Well, so far, I don't think Moses has learned anything yet. So far, this is making sense with at least how it's set up in my mind. The symbol of yuckiness and failure and all that, I'm going to throw it away and it becomes a snake. Yep, see, it's always been a snake. It's always been yucky. It's always been negative. That the snake is consistently used in Scripture and in our lives as a negative example. And so you throw it away, look, it becomes a snake. Maybe that just means the staff was finally truly revealed. That its true identity was a snake, and he runs from it because I'm fleeing from all that. So far, I'm good with this. And then God says, stretch out your hand. Yeah, I would have been stretching. Stretch out your hand and grasp it, which is bad enough. If you're going to pick up a snake, I live in Sweetwater long enough, I have a pair of snake tongs. I did that one time, and I went back to my original snake tong, which is a Remington 870 12 gauge. That's the way to handle snakes. Blow its head off, and then kick it into the dirt somewhere. That's the proper way of handling a snake. If you're going to pick up a snake, how do you pick it up? If I had my snake tongs, and I got the longest ones that they had at the Rattlesnake Roundup show that year, it's like 6 feet long. If I reached out with a pair of snake tongs and grabbed the rattlesnake by its tail, why do you not do that? The snake is going to take a keen interest in the arm that's holding it. So, what's in your hand? A staff, a shepherd's staff, because you know I'm a shepherd now. We'll throw it down, okay. Oh my, it's a snake. I'm out of here. No. Come back, and I want you to pick it up by its tail. How long does God have to wait? Yeah, because I'm not like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, clunk. No, I'm going to be like, are you, I mean, really? And then I'm going to be stretching out my hand. How long? If this was real life, folks, you're talking about potentially a long time and a lot of sweat and a lot of fear before he ever makes contact with a snake. But what's God doing? I want you to go to Pharaoh. I'm going to use you powerfully. I'm going to rescue my people. I've heard their prayer. You can't use me. Okay, let me see. How can I teach Moses if this is not about him? This is about him trusting that I'm going to work through him. Let me see. What do you have? Because God knows. Well, all I have is, well, who I am now. You know, I have a lot of positive things. I can't say I'm the most amazing this, and this. I can say, hey, well, I got this. God says, that'll do. Let's use that. Do you suppose God knew what he had in his hand before he showed up? Sure he did. Throw it down. It becomes a snake. It embodies and creates fear that Moses has. It's an embodiment of his fear to face Pharaoh. But long before he goes to face Pharaoh, he's got to learn to pick up a snake by its tail. And when he finally has enough faith to obey, and he grabs it, what happens? Everything's okay. He turns back into a staff. God not only asked Moses what was in his hand, but he changed Moses' view about what was in his hand. He now had the coolest stick in the neighborhood. Because he would go to Pharaoh, throw it down, snake, pick it up, staff. After a time or two, I bet Moses is like, watch this. Takes the symbol of his defeat and turns it into the coolest stick in town. So all of this is not about us. It's about sharing. It's about trusting that God can take who we are, because he knows who we are, and do something.